Amelie had 48 hours to decide, become the mafia boss's mistress or watch her family disappear one by one, starting with her 19-year-old brother, whose university campus photos were currently scattered across Kang Min-jun's desk like a targeting map. She'd witnessed a drug shipment she should never have seen, could identify faces that should have stayed shadows, and now the cold-eyed Korean crime lord was offering her a deal that sounded like protection but felt like damnation. What she didn't know was that the first night she agreed to give herself to save her family would be the night she accidentally made a monster remember what it felt like to be human, and that would be far more dangerous than any threat he'd made. The photographs were professional quality, high resolution, time-stamped, damning in their precision. Lucas walking to campus at 7:15 a.m. Lucas at Le Paradis Cafe, blue shirt, laptop open, completely unaware of the lens trained on him from across the street. Lucas outside his apartment building in Port Louis, keys in hand, vulnerable and oblivious. Amelie's hands shook as she stared at the images spread across the expensive mahogany desk in the underground office beneath Seoul's most exclusive gambling den. Behind her, she could hear the muffled sounds of the casino floor above. Laughter, slot machines, the orchestrated chaos of people losing money while thinking they were having fun. In front of her, Kang Min-jun watched with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen's reaction to stimuli. 24 hours ago, you said you needed time to think about my offer, he said, his English precise despite the accent. I'm a patient man, Miss Rousseau, but my patience has limits, and those limits are currently being tested by the fact that you witnessed one of my organization's most sensitive operations. I didn't see anything, Amelie whispered, though they both knew it was a lie. You saw 40 kilograms of pharmaceutical-grade methamphetamine change hands. You can identify 4 faces, possibly more. You know the location, the time, the method of transfer. Min-jun leaned back in his leather chair, his charcoal suit immaculate, his expression carved from ice. In my world, that makes you a liability. Liabilities are eliminated or controlled. I'm offering you the courtesy of choosing which. Some courtesy, she said bitterly, more than most receive. He gestured to the photographs. Your brother is brilliant, I'm told. Engineering major, top marks, a bright future ahead of him. His dark eyes locked onto hers. How bright that future remains depends entirely on your decision in the next. He glanced at his watch, a Patek Philippe that probably cost more than her annual salary. 47 hours and 32 minutes. Amelie felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of this man, not when he was so clearly waiting for her to break. What exactly are you asking for? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I've already explained the terms. You move into my penthouse. You become my companion, visible, available when I require your presence. In exchange, your debts are cleared. Your brother's tuition paid in full. Your mother receives a comfortable monthly stipend. And most importantly, he tapped one of Lucas's photos. Your family remains safe from me and from anyone else who might think to use them as leverage against my organization. You mean I become your whore? Min-jun's expression didn't change. If you prefer that terminology, I think of it as insurance. You become an asset rather than a liability. Assets I protect, liabilities I eliminate. For how long? Until I decide otherwise. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. He stood, moving around the desk with the fluid grace of a predator. Up close, he was taller than she'd realized during that brief moment in the cargo area, maybe 6 feet, with sharp features that would have been handsome if they weren't so cold. I'll be honest with you, Miss Rousseau, because I don't see the point in lies. I don't love you. I don't even particularly like you. You're a problem that needs solving, but I'm not a monster in all things. Follow my rules, don't make trouble, and you'll find your life considerably more comfortable than it was working night shifts at Busan port. And if I refuse, the silence that followed was answer enough. Amelie looked down at the photographs again. Lucas, smiling in one shot, completely unaware that his sister's witness to a crime had put a target on his back. Lucas, who'd been so excited when he got his university acceptance. Lucas, who called her every week to talk about his classes and his dreams and his belief that education would lift their family out of poverty. Lucas, who would die because she'd taken a shortcut through a cargo area at the wrong time. I need to see him, she heard herself say. Before I agree, I need to know he's really okay. Minjun studied her for a moment, then pulled out his phone. He spoke rapidly in Korean, then switched to English. You'll video call your brother in 1 hour, from here, with supervision. You'll tell him you're fine. Your job is demanding, everything is normal. If you deviate from that script, if you try to warn him, the deal is off. Understood? She nodded numbly. Good. Wait here. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Miss Rousseau, I do keep my promises. Agree to my terms, and your family will be safer than they've ever been. I have resources you can't imagine. Protection that extends across oceans. Your brother will finish university without ever knowing he was in danger. Your mother will retire from her double shifts. You'll ensure their future by sacrificing your present. His expression was unreadable. Some might consider that noble. Some might consider it slavery. Slavery implies I'd keep you, against your will. I'm giving you a choice. He opened the door. 47 hours, Miss Rousseau. Choose wisely. The video call with Lucas nearly broke her. Her brother's face filled the phone screen, concerned but not panicked. Sister! The man said it was urgent. Are you okay? I'm fine, she forced out, aware of Minjun's guards watching from the corners of the room. My employer just wanted to verify some family information. Nothing to worry about. Your employer called me directly. That's weird. It's a Korean company. Different protocols. The lie tasted like ash. How are your classes going? They talked for 10 minutes. Lucas excited about his thermodynamics project, oblivious to the danger, planning for a future that depended entirely on Amelie's next decision. When they finally hung up, she sat staring at the blank screen, feeling the walls close in. A woman appeared, middle-aged, stern, impeccably dressed. Come with me, she said in accented English. Mr. Kang has arranged a room for you to rest while you consider his offer. The room was a luxury hotel suite 3 blocks from the gambling den. Private, secure, clearly designed to show her what accepting would mean. Comfort, safety, a gilded cage with expensive furnishings. Amelie didn't sleep that night, or the next day. She paced the suite, called her grandmother in Mauritius, listened to Celeste's weathered voice offer prayers and wisdom. Mon petit frère, her grandmother said in Creole. Sometimes God puts us in impossible positions to see what we're made of. Trust your heart. Whatever you choose, I will love you. Even if I choose something shameful, choosing to save family is never shameful. The shame belongs to those who force such choices. When the 48 hours finally expired, Amelie returned to the underground office with her decision made. Minjun looked up from paperwork when she entered. Well, I agree to your terms. Her voice was hollow. I'll be your, whatever you want to call it. But I have conditions. His eyebrow raised slightly. You're negotiating. You said I could choose. I'm choosing the terms I can live with. She forced herself to meet his cold gaze. I want weekly video calls with my family, unsupervised. I want confirmation that my brother's tuition is paid and my mother's stipend is being sent. And I want, she swallowed hard, I want your word that if I do this, truly commit to this arrangement, you'll never hurt them, no matter what happens between us. Agreed. He said it so quickly she almost didn't believe him. Anything else? If I want to leave, if at any point this becomes unbearable, will you let me go? Minjun was quiet for a long moment. If you want to leave, and I believe releasing you won't compromise my organization's security, then yes, you'll be free to go, with financial compensation for your time and continued protection for your family. He stood, moving closer. But understand, once you're in my world, leaving safely becomes complicated. There are people who would see you as leverage against me. Walking away might not be as simple as you'd like. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was more honest than she'd expected. Okay, she breathed. When does this start? Tonight. Pack whatever you need from your apartment. You'll be moving to my penthouse immediately. Everything after that became a blur. The car ride to her tiny Busan apartment, the surreal experience of packing a single suitcase while armed guards waited outside, the long drive to Seoul in the pre-dawn darkness, watching her old life recede with every kilometre. The penthouse was a different world entirely, 40 floors above the city, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a Seoul painted in neon and ambition. Everything was black marble and chrome and sharp edges, beautiful, expensive, utterly impersonal. Minjun showed her to a bedroom that was larger than her entire Busan apartment. You'll stay here. My room is on the other side of the penthouse. When I call for you, you'll come, otherwise your time is your own. The kitchen is fully stocked. Staff will handle cleaning and cooking, though if you prefer to cook yourself, feel free. When will you? She couldn't finish the question. Call for you. His expression was unreadable. When I'm ready. For now, settle in, learn the space, adjust. He left her alone, and Amelie stood in the centre of the expensive bedroom, clutching her grandmother's prayer beads, feeling like she'd just sold her soul and was waiting for the devil to collect. 3 days passed in strange limbo. Minjun worked from his home office, conducting business in rapid Korean, meeting with sharp-suited men who bowed and called him Hyungnim with fearful respect. Amelie saw him at a distance, crossing the penthouse, speaking on the phone, occasionally appearing at mealtimes with polite inquiries about whether she needed anything, but he didn't call for her, didn't demand the intimacy she'd agreed to provide, just left her alone in her beautiful prison. On the 4th night, a text message lit up the phone he'd given her. My bedroom. Now. Amelie's hands shook as she read it. This was it. The transaction she'd agreed to, the price she'd pay for Lucas's safety and her mother's comfort. She found Minjun by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights painting him in amber and shadow. He'd discarded his suit jacket, white shirt rolled to the elbows, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. You sent for me, she said, hating how her voice trembled. He turned, his gaze travelling over her slowly. She'd dressed in one of the outfits his stylist had left, a simple black dress that managed to be both modest and suggestive. Come here. She crossed the space between them on legs that felt like water. When she was close enough to touch, he set down his glass and reached for her, not grabbing, but offering his hand. She took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the calluses that suggested he did more than give orders. Are you afraid? He asked quietly. Yes. No point in lying. Good. Fear keeps you honest. He stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her jaw. But I don't want you terrified. This arrangement works better if you're comfortable. Comfortable, she echoed numbly. You make it sound like a business negotiation. It is a business negotiation. You're providing a service. I'm providing compensation. His thumb traced her cheekbone, but that doesn't mean it has to be unpleasant. Before she could respond, he kissed her. It wasn't brutal or demanding, just firm, purposeful, claiming. When he finally pulled back, she was breathless. The bedroom, he said quietly. What happened next would change everything. If you're ready for a love story that starts in the darkest place and somehow finds light, stay with us. And if you're drawn to romances where love is the most dangerous choice of all, where choosing each other means risking everything, subscribe now. We've got more stories that will wreck you in the best way. Hit that button and let's keep going. Minjun led her to his bedroom, a space as impersonal as the rest of the penthouse, dominated by a massive bed with black silk sheets. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Last chance," he said. "If you want to leave, if you can't do this, tell me now." She should have run, should have called his bluff, taken the risk, trusted that he wouldn't actually hurt her family over her refusal. Instead, she lifted her chin. "I made a deal. I keep my promises." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "Then understand, this is the only time I'll ask. After tonight, if you stay, you're choosing to. Not because you're afraid, because you want to." "I don't want to," she said bluntly. "I know, but maybe you will." He moved closer, his hands finding the zipper of her dress. "I'm going to give you something you don't expect, Amelie. I'm going to make this good for you. Not because I'm kind, I'm not, but because a woman who hates every moment is a liability. A woman who finds pleasure despite herself is an asset who'll stay willingly." It was calculating, manipulative, and brutally honest, and somehow that honesty made it bearable. He undressed her slowly, his hands more gentle than she'd expected. When she stood naked before him, she saw his eyes darken with something that looked like genuine desire rather than cold acquisition. "Ayo," she whispered in Creole. Surprise, alarm, the realization that he was looking at her like she was beautiful rather than purchased. "What does that mean?" he asked. "Nothing, just surprise." "You're surprised I find you attractive?" His hand traced down her arm, leaving goosebumps. "You're beautiful, Amelie. That was never in question." He led her to the bed, and what followed was a masterclass in seduction she hadn't expected. He touched her like he was trying to learn her, figure out what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch despite her fear. When his hand slid between her thighs and found her dry, body betraying her fear despite his skill, he paused. "We'll take our time," he murmured, his fingers gentle as they explored. "I told you, I don't want you terrified." He worked her body with the same focused intensity she'd seen him apply to business negotiations, learning what made her breath catch, what made the fear slowly, reluctantly, give way to unwilling heat. By the time he finally positioned himself between her thighs, she was wet despite herself, her body betraying her mind's resistance. "Look at me," he commanded softly, and she did, met his dark eyes as he pressed forward, beginning to enter her. The sharp pain made her gasp, her hands flying up to push against his chest instinctively. He froze. Everything stopped, the pressure, the movement. Even his breathing seemed to pause. Minjun's expression shifted from concentration to shock, his eyes widening as understanding hit. "You're—" He stopped, his voice rough. "Bondi, you're—" "Please," she whispered in Creole, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes, not from the pain alone, but from the vulnerability of this moment, the exposure of something she'd guarded. "Please, just, why didn't you tell me?" He pulled back slightly, though his body still pinned hers. "A virgin. You're a virgin, and you didn't think to mention this." "Would it have mattered?" she asked bitterly. "Yes." The word was forceful, absolute. He withdrew completely, rolling to the side, his hand running through his hair in agitation. "Of course it would have mattered. I don't." He seemed unable to complete the thought. They lay there in charged silence, the Seoul skyline glittering beyond the windows, bearing witness to a transaction that had just become impossibly complicated. "I'm 24 years old," Amelie said finally, her voice small. "I've had opportunities. I was always too busy working, sending money home, taking care of family. Dating seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. And then I came to Korea, and I was even more focused on survival, and I just never... She stopped, feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her nakedness. I didn't think it mattered. You were going to take what you wanted anyway. No. Minjun sat up, his back to her, his shoulders tense. I wasn't. I'm not. He turned to look at her, and she saw something in his expression she didn't expect. Conflict. I've done terrible things, Amelie. I've hurt people, killed people, built an empire on violence and fear, but I don't take innocence. Not like this. Not from someone who's only here because I threatened her family. Then what do we do? She whispered. He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Then, I'm going to give you a choice. A real one this time. I'm going to make this good for you, as good as a first time can be with someone you don't love. And when dawn comes, you decide stay or go. If you stay, you're mine. Not as leverage, not as insurance. Mine. If you go, I'll protect your family anyway. No strings, no retaliation. Why? The question broke from her. Why would you do that? Because, he paused, seeming to search for words, because the way you looked at me when I pushed you down on this bed, like I was a monster you'd resigned yourself to enduring, that look is going to haunt me, and I'm trying very hard not to become the kind of monster who deserves that look. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her, maybe the most honest thing he'd said to anyone. Okay, she breathed, okay. Make it good. Show me what you meant. And at dawn, she swallowed hard. At dawn, I'll decide. What followed was nothing like she'd expected. Minjun touched her like she was something precious, something to be savoured. He kissed her slowly, deeply, swallowing her surprised gasps. He learned her body with patient hands, finding places that made her arch and moan despite her fear. Despite knowing this was still a crime boss who'd threatened her family to get her here. When he finally entered her again, slowly, carefully, giving her time to adjust to the stretch and burn, he watched her face in the dim light. Breathe, he murmured. Just breathe through it. It gets better. And impossibly, it did. The pain faded to pressure. Pressure to fullness. Fullness to something that made her breath catch for entirely different reasons. He moved with more restraint than she'd thought possible, building her pleasure in careful increments. When she came, shocked and gasping, her body clenching around him, he groaned like she'd undone him completely. His own release followed moments later, his face buried in her neck, his grip on her hips almost desperate. In the aftermath, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard, the city lights painting patterns on their sweat-slicked skin. Stay, he said into the darkness. It was somewhere between command and plea. When dawn comes, stay. Amelie didn't answer, couldn't answer. She just lay there, feeling everything shift, feeling the transaction become something neither of them had planned for, feeling impossibly like maybe the monster had a heart after all, and that terrified her more than any threat he'd ever made. When morning came, painting Seoul in shades of pink and gold, Minjun woke to find her still there, watching him with wary eyes. I'm staying, she said before he could ask. Not because I'm afraid, not because of my family. I'm staying because you made me a promise that if I stayed, I'd be yours, and I want to know what that means. Something fierce and possessive blazed in his expression. It means you're mine to protect, mine to provide for, mine to... He paused. Mine to care for. And what are you? She asked quietly. If I'm yours, what does that make you? Minjun didn't have an answer. He'd never been anyone's before. never belonged to anything except the organization, the codes, the violence. But looking at Amelie in the morning light, her dark skin luminous against his white sheets, her expression still wary but no longer merely afraid, he thought maybe he wanted to find out. "Yours," he finally said. "If you'll have me." She reached up and touched his face, a gentle gesture that no one had offered him in longer than he could remember. "Mo content toi," she whispered in Creole. What does that mean? A small smile curved her lips, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It means, "I'm staying," but understanding what staying meant proved far more complicated than either of them anticipated. The first week passed in a strange dance of proximity and distance. Minjun worked from his home office most days, conducting business in clipped Korean phone calls and video conferences where Amelie caught glimpses of sharp-suited men who bowed and called him Hyung Nim with the kind of respect born from fear. She learned quickly that he ran more than just a drug operation. There were shipping routes and protection rackets, gambling dens and carefully laundered investments that touched legitimate business. She was sleeping with a man who built empires on other people's fear. The realization should have sent her running. Instead, she found herself watching him work with reluctant fascination. The way he commanded rooms without raising his voice, the precision with which he made decisions that probably ended lives, the cold calculation that seemed to govern everything except, increasingly, when he looked at her. He'd been right about one thing. After that first night, everything changed. He didn't summon her to his bed like a servant. He appeared at her door near midnight, knocking softly, asking rather than demanding. And when she let him in, which she did, every time, hating and craving it in equal measure, he touched her like she was something he was learning to value beyond mere possession. "Tell me about Mauritius," he said one night, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder in the darkness. "What's it like, your island?" So Amelie told him about Port Louis with its mix of African, Indian, Chinese and French influences all bleeding together, about beaches with sand so white it hurt to look at in the midday sun, about her grandmother Celeste, who kept a statue of the Virgin Mary next to one of Durga and saw no contradiction, about street food that made her mouth water just remembering dol pourri and gâteau piments, and mine frites sold from carts where vendors knew your name and your family history going back 3 generations. "It sounds chaotic," Minjun said, but his tone was curious rather than judgmental. "It is. Beautiful chaos. Everyone knows everyone. Privacy doesn't exist. Your business is the neighborhood's business." She smiled in the dark. "Very different from Seoul. Here you can live in a building with 100 people and never speak to a single neighbor. I prefer it that way. Less complicated. Less human, you mean?" He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, but humanity is a luxury in my world. Caring about people makes you vulnerable, gives your enemies leverage. Like I'm leverage," she said, the words sharper than intended. "You started as leverage." His arm tightened around her. "You're becoming something else." "What? I don't know yet. That's what terrifies me." The honesty disarmed her, the way his honesty always did. He was a monster who never lied to her, and that somehow made him bearable, made him almost not good, but real. "I miss my grandmother's cooking," Amelie said eventually, changing the subject because the emotional honesty felt too raw. "Korean food is beautiful, but it's not home. Everything here is kimchi and soup and fermented things I don't understand. I miss food that tastes like sunshine and spice and the ocean." "Then make it," Minjun said simply. "The kitchen is yours to use. Tell the staff what ingredients you need. If they don't exist in Korea, I'll have them imported. You'd import Mauritian ingredients for me. I'd do considerably more than that if it made you stop looking so sad when you think I'm not watching." The casual admission made her chest tight. This was the contradiction that was Min Jun, the man who'd threaten her family without hesitation, would also move heaven and earth to ease her homesickness. Both things were equally true, equally him. 2 days later, she found herself in the penthouse's immaculate kitchen with a shopping list that made the housekeeper's eyes widen. Yellow split peas, cumin seeds, turmeric, the specific type of flour used for Mauritian flatbread. Some ingredients arrived within hours from Seoul's international markets. Others took 2 days to import from specialty suppliers. By the 3rd day, Amelie was elbow-deep in dough, making dol puri for the first time in 2 years, and the smell of it, cumin and turmeric and ground split peas, made her eyes sting with memories of home. She was so focused on the task that she didn't hear Min Jun enter the kitchen, didn't notice him watching until his voice made her jump. "What are you making?" She turned to find him in the doorway, his usual sharp suit replaced by more casual clothes, dark slacks and a fitted black shirt that made him look younger, almost approachable. "Dol puri," she said, her hands continuing to knead the dough. Traditional Mauritian street food. Flatbread stuffed with split peas. You eat it with curry and pickles and, she caught herself, you probably won't like it. Korean food is so different from, show me, he interrupted. She blinked. Show you? How to make it? I'm curious. And so, for the next 2 hours, Amelie taught a Korean mafia boss how to make Mauritian flatbread in a Seoul penthouse 40 stories above the city. She walked him through soaking the split peas, grinding them with cumin and turmeric, kneading the dough until it was elastic and smooth. He was surprisingly good with his hands, she discovered, patient and precise, following her instructions with the same focus he brought to his criminal empire. You have to feel it, she explained, guiding his hands in the dough. Not too dry, not too wet. When it's ready, it'll feel like silk, smooth and alive under your fingers. His hands stilled under hers. Like this. Yes, she breathed, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, the heat of his body against her back, the intimacy of teaching something so personal, so tied to her identity. When the first tol puri came off the pan, golden and steaming, the split peas visible through the thin bread, she tore a piece and held it up to his mouth. You eat it with your hands, she instructed. No utensils. It's peasant food, street food, meant to be messy and shared. He bit into the piece she offered, chewing thoughtfully. She watched his face, trying to read his reaction, terrified he'd hate it, that this piece of her culture would be rejected the way so much about her felt foreign in Korea. Then he smiled, a real smile, reaching his eyes for the first time since she'd met him. It's good, he said, sounding genuinely surprised. Spicy, but good. What's in the filling again? Cumin, turmeric, ground yellow peas. She felt warmth bloom in her chest at his approval. My grandmother's recipe. She'd make it every Sunday after church, and the whole neighborhood would come to our house to eat. We'd sit on the veranda and she'd serve dol puri with 3 different curries and pickled vegetables, and everyone would talk and laugh and her voice caught. I didn't realize how much I missed it until now. Tell me about her, Min Jun said, pulling up a stool to the kitchen island, reaching for another piece of bread. Your grandmother. So Amelie told him about Celeste, who at 75 still climbed 3 flights of stairs without breathing hard, who spoke Creole and Hindi and French, and had once punched a man twice her size for harassing a young girl at the market, who kept a shrine that blended Catholicism and Hinduism with the ease of someone who understood that God answered to many names, who'd wrapped prayer beads around Amelie's wrist before she left for Korea and said, Go make your fortune, mon petit frère, but don't forget where you come from. She sounds formidable, Min Jun commented. She is. She's... Amelie paused. her hands going still over the next piece of dough. "She's the strongest person I know. When my father died, my mother just broke, collapsed under the grief. But my grandmother, she kept us together, kept us fed, kept us going, kept us alive." "How did your father die?" The question was gentle, but Amelie flinched anyway. "Gang violence. Wrong place, wrong time. He was walking home from work and there was a shootout between rival groups in Port Louis. He got caught in the crossfire." She met Minjun's eyes, letting him see the accusation there. "So you understand why my mother hates what you are, why I should hate what you are. But you don't. Not a question." "I don't know what I feel," she admitted. "You're supposed to be the villain in my story, the monster who threatened my family, who forced me into his bed. But you're also the person who noticed I couldn't eat Korean breakfast and ordered French toast instead, who holds me when I cry, who just spent 2 hours learning to make my grandmother's recipe because I was homesick." "People contain multitudes," Minjun said quietly. "I've killed people, Amelie, ordered deaths, built an empire on violence and fear. Those things are true. It's also true that I care whether you eat breakfast. Both things exist simultaneously. How do you live with that? The contradictions?" "I don't think about it. Thinking leads to doubt. Doubt leads to hesitation. Hesitation gets you killed." He reached across the counter, his fingers finding hers in the flour dust. "But lately, I've been thinking more, doubting more, and I blame you entirely." "Sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Don't be. It's—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "It's not unwelcome, the uncertainty. It means I'm still human enough to question." They finished cooking together, the conversation shifting to lighter things. His favourite books, spy thrillers and historical fiction that surprised her. Her attempts to learn Korean from drama shows, which he found hilarious because drama Korean bore little resemblance to actual conversational language. The strange quirks of living in Seoul versus Port Louis, how Seoul never slept but was somehow more lonely, how Port Louis was crowded and nosy but never made you feel alone. When they finally sat down to eat the dol puri with curry, Amelie had approximated from available ingredients. Minjun insisted she teach him the proper way to eat it. "Tear the bread like this," she demonstrated. "Scoop the curry. No, with your right hand, left hand is for drinking. Yes, like that. Now," he made a mess, curry dripping down his fingers, and she laughed. Actual laughter, bright and surprised, and he stared at her like he'd never heard a sound quite like it. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You haven't laughed since you arrived," he said. "I was starting to think you couldn't." "I haven't had much to laugh about." "No," he agreed. "You haven't. I'm sorry for that." The apology hung between them. Unexpected and sincere. Amelie didn't know how to respond, so she did the only thing that felt right. She reached across the table and took his curry-sticky hand in hers. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for this, for trying." "I'm not good at trying," he admitted. "I'm better at taking what I want, and damn the consequences. Then maybe I'm good for you." "Maybe you are." That night, when he came to her bed, it was different, slower, less about possession and more about exploration. He touched her like he was memorizing her, and she touched him back, tracing the scars on his ribs, the old bullet wound on his shoulder, the story of violence written on his skin. "Tell me," she whispered as his mouth found her throat. "Tell me about these." So he did. Between kisses and touches and the slow build of heat between them, he told her stories. The bullet wound from a deal gone wrong when he was 23, the knife scar along his ribs from a rival who'd gotten too close, the smaller marks from childhood, a father who believed pain built strength, a world that rewarded hardness over humanity. "You survived," she murmured, her fingers gentle over each mark. "You survived all of it." Surviving isn't living, he said against her skin. Then live, she challenged. Right now. With me, no empire, no obligations, just us. And he did. He made love to her with an intensity that stole her breath, learning her body the way she'd taught him to make whole puree, patient, attentive, focused entirely on her pleasure. When she came apart beneath him, she cried out in Creole, words that might have been prayers or profanity or both, and he swallowed them with his kiss. After, tangled together in expensive sheets with Seoul's lights painting patterns on their skin, she taught him Creole phrases in the darkness. Mo content toi, she said, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. You know that one already. I like you. I'm fond of you. Mo content toi, he repeated, his pronunciation terrible but earnest. What else? Ayo, she said. It means surprise, concern, a little bit of alarm, like when you see something unexpected. Ayo? He tried the sound, mangling it beautifully. Yes, it's very useful. Mauritians say it constantly. Ayo, look at that. Ayo, what are you doing? Ayo, that's terrible. She demonstrated the different inflections, and he attempted each one, his serious concentration making her smile. Pas rod tracasse, she continued. Don't look for trouble. Very important phrase in Mauritian life. I think I've already found trouble, he said, his hand moving into her hair, the moment you walked past those shipping containers. Qui manière, she said. How come? What's wrong? Also very useful. Qui manière you make everything feel different, he asked, the Creole awkward in his mouth, but the sentiment clear. Mon petit fleur, she whispered. My little flower, what my grandmother calls me. Mon petit fleur, he repeated softly, and the endearment sounded almost reverent in his rough voice. You're a terrible student, she teased. Your accent is atrocious. Then you'll have to keep teaching me. It was the closest he'd come to asking her to stay long-term, and they both knew it. Maybe I will, she said softly. He pulled her closer, and she let him, feeling the contradiction of safety in dangerous arms, comfort in the embrace of someone who'd threatened everything she loved but was becoming something she couldn't quite name. The second week brought Park Tae-hyun into her life. Minjun's underboss arrived unannounced one morning, walking into the penthouse like he owned it. Stocky where Minjun was lean, scarred where Minjun was relatively unmarked, he had the look of a man who'd fought his way up from nothing and bore the proof of every battle. Amelie was curled up on the living room couch with one of Minjun's thriller novels when the door opened. She froze, her heart hammering as Taehyun stopped short, his eyes narrowing as he took in every detail, her position on the couch, the book in her hands, the way she wore one of Minjun's shirts over leggings. Hyung-nim, he called out in Korean. Minjun emerged from his office, his expression cooling when he saw his second-in-command. I didn't summon you. No, Taehyun agreed, still staring at Amelie with open assessment. But we need to talk, privately. Minjun's jaw tightened, but he nodded. To Amelie, his voice gentler. Go to your room. She fled without argument, but she could hear their raised voices through the door, not the words, but the tone. Argument, accusation, concern bleeding into anger. When Minjun came to her later, his expression was thunderous. Taehyun thinks I'm being foolish, he said without preamble. Keeping you here, showing preference. He says it makes me weak, distracted. He might be right, Amelie said quietly. He's absolutely right. Minjun moved closer, his hands finding her shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. The men are talking about you, about how I've changed since you arrived. Some see it as weakness, others are simply curious, but it's becoming complicated. Then send me away. No, the word was flat, absolute, brooking no argument. Then what? She asked. What do we do? We continue as we are, he said, and I deal with anyone who has a problem with it. Minjun, if I'm causing problems in your organization, you're not causing anything. They're revealing their prejudices, and I'm learning who's truly loyal versus who follows me out of fear. He kissed her then, hard and possessive, like he could somehow brand her as his through force of will alone. You're mine! I don't care what my organization thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. You're mine, and that's the end of the discussion. But it wasn't the end. Amelie could feel it, the pressure building, the outside world encroaching on their bubble of carefully constructed normalcy. That night, Lucas called. It was their first real conversation since she'd entered Minjun's world, and Amelie had been dreading it. Her brother's face filled the screen, bright and smiling and completely oblivious to the danger he'd been in just weeks ago. Sister, finally! I've been trying to reach you for days. Where have you been? I got a new job, she said, the lie sitting heavy on her tongue. Live-in position, translating for a businessman. Very demanding. Must be if he won't let you have time for family calls. Lucas grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. But, hey, the money. Bondi, sister, what did you do? My tuition was paid in full 4 years. And Maman says someone deposited money in her account. Told her it was from you. I've been saving. Amelie interrupted, her heart racing. I wanted to surprise you. Well, you did. We're so grateful. This changes everything for us. His expression sobered slightly. But I miss you. When are you coming home to visit? I don't know, she admitted. This job, it's complicated. But I'm okay, I promise. Is your boss good to you? You look tired. I'm fine, she lied. Really? Just busy. Tell me about your classes. They talked for another 20 minutes. Lucas excited about his thermodynamics project, completely unaware that he'd been photographed and targeted and extracted to Korea for his own safety. When she finally ended the call, she found Minjun watching from the doorway. He seems like a good kid, he said. He's brilliant and kind and everything good about our family. You protected him. That's what family does. By selling myself to a gangster. By making an impossible choice under impossible circumstances. Minjun moved into the room, pulling her against his chest. Don't diminish your sacrifice by calling it selling. You made a strategic decision to protect someone you love. There's no shame in that. My mother would disagree. Your mother doesn't need to know. But secrets, Amelie was learning, had a way of surfacing when you least expected them. The package arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, shattering their careful peace. Amelie had been grocery shopping with her assigned escort, one of Minjun's younger soldiers who spoke broken English and spent the entire trip looking simultaneously bored and hypervigilant. She'd grown used to the constant supervision, the way security shadowed her whenever she left the penthouse, the careful choreography of her limited freedom. But when they returned to the building, she found photographs scattered outside the penthouse door. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Just pictures, glossy and professional, scattered across the expensive hallway carpet, like dropped playing cards. Then her brain processed the images and her stomach dropped through the floor. Lucas, her brother, in every photo, walking to campus, sitting in the cafe with the blue shirt she'd seen him wearing on their video call, outside his apartment building, each image marked with a timestamp and location precise as a targeting matrix. And a note, in Korean characters she couldn't read, but the threat was universal in its clarity. Bondi, she breathed, her hands shaking as she gathered the photos. No, no, no. Her escort was already on his phone, rapid Korean into the receiver, his posture shifting from casual to combat-ready in an instant. She didn't remember the elevator ride up, didn't remember entering the penthouse. Suddenly, she was just there, photos scattered across Minjun's desk while he stared at them with an expression that could have frozen hell. Taehyun stood beside him, his scarred face grim. Jang faction, he said quietly. They've been watching for weeks. Minjun held up the note, his knuckles white with the force of his grip. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. They want information, shipment schedules, route details, payment structures. They want her to give them everything she's learned about our operations. He looked at Amelie, and she saw something dangerous in his eyes. They're giving us 48 hours. Deliver the information or they kill Lucas, she finished, her voice hollow. Not kill, not immediately. Minjun set the note down with deliberate care. They'll take him first, use him for leverage, extract information through torture if necessary. Then, depending on cooperation, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Amelie's legs gave out. She sank into the chair behind her, the photos blurring as tears spilled down her face. This is my fault. If I hadn't stayed, This is not your fault, Minjun said sharply, moving to kneel in front of her chair, his hands gripping hers hard enough to ground her. This is the Jang faction seeing an opportunity and taking it. This is them making a strategic move against my organization using available leverage. You are not responsible for their choices. But Lucas is in danger because of me, because I'm with you. Lucas is in danger because the Jang faction are ruthless opportunists. If it wasn't him, they'd find another pressure point. His grip tightened. But I will handle this. Do you understand? I will get your brother to safety. How? She pulled her hands free, standing abruptly, her fear morphing into anger. How are you going to protect him when he's in Mauritius and you're here? When they've already been watching him long enough to establish his patterns? When they clearly have people on the ground who can— I have people everywhere, Minjun interrupted, standing with her. Mauritius included. I can have a team at his apartment within 6 hours. Have him extracted and on a plane to Seoul within 12. He'll be here under my protection before the Jang deadline expires. And then what? He lives in hiding forever? Becomes a prisoner like me? The words hung between them, sharp and accusing. Minjun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. You're not a prisoner, aren't I? She gestured at the penthouse, at the security, at the life she'd been forced into. I can't leave without permission, can't contact my family without clearing it through you first. Can't make a single choice without considering how it affects your organization. That sounds like prison to me. You can leave, he said quietly, and the words shocked her into silence. Right now. I'll arrange protection for your family, extract your brother, ensure your mother's safety. You can walk out that door and never look back. I won't stop you. She stared at him. You mean that? I've never lied to you, Amelie. Not once. And he hadn't. For all his manipulation, his threats, his criminal empire, he'd been brutally honest from the start about what he was, what he wanted, what he was capable of. If I leave, she said slowly, what happens to you? I survive, like I always have. That's not what I asked. A muscle worked in his jaw. What happens to me is irrelevant. Not to me. The admission surprised them both. 3 weeks ago, she'd hated him, had seen him as the monster who'd destroyed her life, the criminal who'd backed her into an impossible corner, the villain in her story. Now she couldn't imagine walking away, not while he was looking at her like that. Like she was something precious he was trying desperately not to break. Not while her own treacherous heart was learning to care for someone who'd started as her captor and become something infinitely more complicated. Qui manière, she whispered in Creole, her voice breaking. How did this happen? How did I start caring about you? The same way I started caring about you, he said roughly, closing the distance between them. One day at a time, one conversation, one meal, one moment of unexpected gentleness in a life full of violence. Before she could respond, Taehyun cleared his throat from across the room. Hyungnim, we need to move quickly. If we're extracting the brother, do it, Minjun ordered without looking away from Amelie. Best team, priority extraction, and find out how long Jang's been surveilling. I want to know every person who touched this operation. Taehyun nodded and disappeared, already pulling out his phone. Minjun pulled Amelie against him, his arms coming around her with desperate strength. I will keep him safe, he promised into her hair. Your brother, your mother, you, I will keep all of you safe. At what cost? She asked, against his chest. How many people will you kill for me? As many as necessary. The answer should have horrified her, should have sent her running, should have made her see him for the monster he truly was. Instead, she felt a dark, shameful warmth bloom in her chest, because part of her, the part that had been formed in the aftermath of her father's senseless death, the part that had struggled and scraped and fought for every small victory, wanted someone willing to do violence on her behalf. She'd spent 24 years being good, being careful, following rules that didn't protect her, trusting systems that didn't serve her. And where had it gotten her? Standing in a mafia boss's penthouse, afraid for her family, trapped between worlds, learning that sometimes the only language the world understood was violence. Okay, she said against his chest, making a choice she knew she couldn't unmake. Okay. Save my brother, protect my family, do whatever you have to do. She pulled back to look at him, letting him see the shift in her eyes, the moment she stopped fighting what she was becoming. And I'll stay, not because I'm afraid, not because you forced me. I'll stay because I choose to. Something fierce and triumphant blazed in his expression. You're choosing me, even knowing what I am? What this means? I'm choosing us, she corrected. Whatever this is between us, I'm choosing to see where it goes, even if it's dangerous, even if it destroys me. I'm choosing you. He kissed her then, hard and possessive and full of promises. Neither of them could afford to make, but were making anyway. And Amelie kissed him back, understanding that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. She wasn't a prisoner anymore. She wasn't even a reluctant participant. She was a willing accomplice in her own transformation. And that made all the difference. The extraction took 14 hours. Minjun coordinated everything from his office, speaking rapid-fire Korean into multiple phones, directing his people in Mauritius with the precision of a general commanding troops. Amelie sat in the corner, watching him order people's movements, authorize payments, casually discuss violence with the same tone someone might use to order dinner. She should have been horrified. Instead, she was fascinated. This was who he really was, not the man who'd learned to make dal puri, not the person who held her when she cried. This was Kang Min-jun, crime boss, the person who'd built an empire on calculated brutality and strategic thinking, and she couldn't look away. The cafe, he said into the phone, switching between Korean and English seemingly for her benefit. That's where he goes every morning at 7:15. Have 2 men there tomorrow. When he arrives, approach calmly. Show him the credential photograph of his sister. Tell him she sent you. He'll either cooperate or panic. If he panics, sedate him. No permanent damage. Amelie flinched at the casual mention of sedation, but Min-jun just continued issuing orders, like he was arranging a business meeting rather than an international kidnapping. By evening Korea time, early morning in Mauritius, Lucas was in custody. Not kidnapped, Min-jun insisted, though Amelie wasn't sure her brother would appreciate the distinction. Protected, secured, extracted. The video call came through at midnight. Lucas's face filled the screen, bewildered and clearly sedated, his eyes struggling to focus. Sister? What's happening? These men, they said you sent them. They showed me your picture, but then His hand went to his neck where the injection site would be. They drugged me, took me on a plane. I woke up in Korea and his eyes focused past her, landing on Minjun standing behind her chair. Who is that? That's Minjun, Amelie said carefully, aware of how insane this was about to sound. He's the one who paid your tuition. The businessman I told you about. The businessman you work for? Lucas's eyes narrowed despite his drug-induced haze. Sister, what's really going on? And don't lie to me, you've never been a good liar. So Amelie told him. Not everything. She spared him the details of the transaction, the initial coercion, the way she'd traded her body for his safety. But she told him enough, that she'd witnessed something dangerous, that she'd made a deal to protect the family, that Minjun's world had enemies who saw her, and by extension Lucas, as leverage. Her brother listened in silence, his expressions cycling through disbelief, anger, fear, and finally a weary acceptance that made him look far older than 19. So what now? He asked when she'd finished. I just live here with you and the gangster who bought my sister. I wasn't bought, Amelie protested, though the words felt hollow. Really? Because from where I'm sitting. Enough! Minjun cut in, his voice quiet but commanding enough to snap Lucas's mouth shut. You're angry. That's understandable. You were drugged, taken from your home, brought to a foreign country without consent. But your anger won't change the situation. You're here because people wanted to hurt you to get to me. You'll stay here until that threat is neutralized. Then you can decide where you want to go. And if I want to leave now, Lucas challenged, then you'll be escorted back to Mauritius and placed under armed protection there. But you'll go to a safe house, not your apartment. You'll have guards watching you every moment. Your freedom will be even more restricted than it would be here. Minjun's hand tightened on Amelie's shoulder. Your sister would prefer you safe and nearby where she can see you, but the choice is yours. Lucas looked at Amelie, and she saw the question in his eyes. Are you okay? Really? She nodded slightly, trying to convey reassurance she didn't entirely feel. Pa rod tracasse, sister, Lucas said finally in Creole, and she heard the worry beneath the words. Don't look for trouble. But the trouble had already found them, had wrapped its arms around them and refused to let go. I'll stay, he said to Minjun, his voice reluctant but resigned, for now. But I want to continue my classes remotely, and I want to be able to call maman without someone listening to every word. Agreed. I'll arrange a tutor for Korean language lessons as well. You'll need it to navigate Seoul, and your calls to your mother will be private, with the understanding that if you tell her anything that compromises security, the consequences fall on all of us. Minjun's expression was unreadable. We're clear. Crystal. After the call ended, Amelie sat in silence, processing the reality that her brother was now part of this world. Minjun dismissed the staff, poured them both drinks, soju for him, wine for her, and sat beside her on the couch. He'll adjust, he said. Give him time. He's a good kid. He doesn't deserve this. No one deserves the hand they're dealt. We just learn to play it. He took a long drink. He's smart, resilient. He'll survive this. Is that what we're doing? Just surviving? I don't know what we're doing, Minjun admitted. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I've never cared about someone's opinion before, never wanted someone to see me as more than what I am. But with you, with your brother now, I find myself wanting to be worthy of your trust. And I don't know how to do that while still being what I need to be to keep you safe. You're doing fine, she said softly. Am I? Because I just had your teenage brother sedated and flown across the world against his will. That doesn't feel fine. You saved his life. I endangered it first, by keeping you, by being selfish enough to want you despite knowing the risks. He set down his glass with deliberate care. Taehyun was right. You make me weak, but I can't bring myself to care. That's not weakness, Amelie said, turning to face him fully. That's the opposite. Weakness would be never letting anyone matter, never risking anything. You're risking everything for this, for us. That takes more strength than I think you realize. He looked at her like she'd said something profound, and maybe she had, or maybe they were both just desperately trying to reframe their impossible situation into something bearable, something that didn't make them monsters or fools. Stay with me tonight, he said, though it wasn't really a question. Not in my bed. Just stay. I don't want to be alone. So she did. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, the Seoul skyline glittering beyond the windows like a promise or a threat or both. Lucas arrived the next afternoon, escorted by two of Minjun's men, and looking significantly less drugged but no less disoriented. Amelie met him at the door. Pulling him into a hug, he returned stiffly. "Your penthouse prison is very nice," he said in Creole, his tone dry. "It's not a prison." "Sure it isn't." He pulled back, looking around with wide eyes. "Sister, this place it's insane. How much money does this guy have?" "Too much, probably." Minjun appeared from his office, and Amelie watched the two men size each other up, her brother wary and defensive, Minjun assessing and cautious. "Your room is ready," Minjun said in careful English. "Third door on the left. Your belongings from Mauritius are being shipped and should arrive within the week. In the meantime, I've arranged for basic necessities and a laptop so you can continue your studies." "How generous," Lucas said, his sarcasm barely veiled. "I'm not asking you to like me," Minjun said evenly. "I'm asking you to survive this situation with your family intact. Can you do that?" Lucas was quiet for a moment, then nodded once. "Yeah, I can do that." Over the next few days, a strange new rhythm emerged. Lucas occupied the guest room, emerging mainly for meals and Korean language lessons with the tutor Minjun had hired. A cheerful university student who didn't ask questions about why a Mauritian teenager needed emergency language training. He was polite but distant with Minjun, protective and worried with Amelie. "You're different," he said to her one evening when they were alone. They'd been making minor frite together, the familiar ritual of cooking giving them an excuse to talk. "Since I last saw you, you're, I don't know, more present, more you, somehow." "That doesn't make sense." "It does, though. In Mauritius, before you left, you were always so focused on providing, on being the responsible one. You never let yourself just be, but here, even in this crazy situation, you seem more alive." "Maybe because I have no choice," Amelie said, stirring the noodles with more force than necessary. "When your options narrow to survival or surrender, you learn to be present pretty quickly." "Or maybe it's him," Lucas said quietly. "The gangster. His name is Min Jun." "Okay, Min Jun. The man who threatened our family to get you into his bed." Lucas's voice was careful, not accusatory, just observing. "You care about him, really care about him." "I shouldn't, but you do." Amelie was quiet for a long moment, the smell of ginger and soy filling the kitchen with memories of home. "Yes," she finally admitted, "I do, and I don't know if that makes me strong or stupid or just broken somehow, that I can care about someone who started as my captor." "Maybe it just makes you human," Lucas said. "People are complicated, feelings don't follow logic, and from what I've seen—" He paused. "He looks at you like you're the only real thing in his world. That's not nothing. He's killed people, Lucas. He runs a criminal empire. He's everything Papa would have hated. Papa died before I could remember him. I don't know what he would have thought, but I know what I see. A man who extracted me from danger within hours, who's treating me with more respect than I expected, who clearly cares about you in a way that's—" Lucas struggled for words. "It's intense, maybe too intense, but it's real. That doesn't make it right." "No, but maybe it makes it worth fighting for anyway. The observation from her 19-year-old brother shouldn't have hit so hard, but it did. That night, when Minjun came to her room, she told him what Lucas had said. "Your brother is perceptive," Minjun said, pulling her against his chest. "And he's not wrong. What I feel for you, it's the most real thing I've felt in longer than I can remember. Maybe ever." "That's not exactly a love confession," she teased gently. "I don't know how to do love confessions. I've never—" He stopped, his arms tightening around her. "I've never been in love before. I don't know if what I feel qualifies, but I know I think about you constantly. I know I rearrange my entire organization's operations to keep you safe. I know the thought of losing you makes me want to burn the world down. Is that love?" "I think it might be," Emily whispered. "The obsessive, dangerous kind that probably isn't healthy but feels inevitable anyway." "And you, what do you feel?" She thought about lying, about protecting herself with careful words and emotional distance. Then she thought about what Lucas had said, about being more alive here, more present, more herself. "I love you," she said simply. "I don't want to. It would be easier if I didn't, but I do. I love the way you learned to make dal puri because I was homesick. I love that you're trying to be better even though you don't believe you can be. I love that you're honest about being a monster instead of pretending to be a hero. I love—" Her voice cracked. "I love you despite every reason not to. Maybe because of every reason not to." He kissed her then, deep and desperate. And she tasted salt, realized with shock that he was crying, actually crying, tears sliding silently down his face as he kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. "Michio," he said roughly when they finally broke apart. "I'm crazy about you, crazy for you. What I feel, it's insanity." "Then we're both insane," she said, wiping his tears with her thumbs. This man who killed people for a living, but cried when someone loved him. And maybe that's okay. They made love that night with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Every touch a promise, every kiss a confession. And when he finally moved inside her, his forehead pressed to hers, his eyes never leaving her face, she understood that this was what they'd been building toward from that first night, not just physical intimacy, but the kind of emotional nakedness that was far more terrifying. "Saranghae," he whispered in Korean. "I love you." "Mo kontan toi," she answered in Creole. "I love you." 2 languages, 2 worlds, 1 impossible truth. A week later, Minjun announced they were leaving Seoul. "Where are we going?" Amelie asked, watching him pack with efficient precision. "My safe house. In the countryside. The Jang faction threat has been neutralized, but I want you and Lucas somewhere even more secure while I handle the aftermath." He paused in his packing. It's where I go when I need to breathe. The only place that's mine, not my father's empire. I want you to see it." The drive took 2 hours. Seoul's dense urbanity gradually giving way to mountains and valleys painted in autumn colours. The safe house turned out to be a traditional hanok. Curved tile roof, wooden beams, ondol heated floors, sliding hanji paper doors. It was nestled into the mountainside, surrounded by forest, with security cameras hidden among the trees and guards patrolling a perimeter Amelie couldn't see but knew was there. It was the most beautiful prison she'd ever seen. Lucas took one look at the traditional architecture and grinned. "This is where you've been hiding the real Korea." "I was starting to think it was all just Seoul skyscrapers and convenience stores." "This was my mentor's house," Minjun explained as they entered. "He left it to me when he died. It's the only place I can truly relax." They settled into a strange domesticity over the next week. Lucas studied Korean with surprising dedication, video calling his tutor and practicing with the housekeeper who seemed charmed by his attempts. Minjun worked from the small office, his business continuing even in retreat. And Amelie cooked. She made gâteaux piments, those Mauritian chili cakes that required precise spice ratios and patience. The smell of them frying filled the hanok, with memories so strong she had to stop and cry for a moment, overwhelmed by homesickness. Minjun found her crying into the batter. "What's wrong?" He moved to stand behind her, his arms coming around her waist. "I miss home," she admitted. "I miss my grandmother. I miss my mother, even though she'd hate everything about this situation. I miss the ocean and the language and the food that doesn't need translation." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I miss being somewhere I belonged." "You belong here," he said quietly, "with me, if you'll let yourself believe that. I'm Mauritian, you're Korean, your world is violence, and mine should have been, safety. How do we belong together? Because we choose to, because belonging isn't about where you're from, it's about where you decide to be." He turned her in his arms. "And I choose you, every day, every moment, I choose you. Even though I'm broken." The question escaped before she could stop it. "You're not broken. You're adapting, surviving, becoming someone new because your circumstances demanded it." His hand cupped her face. "That's not weakness. That's evolution." She kissed him, tasting salt and uncertainty and the desperate hope that maybe he was right. Maybe she wasn't broken. Maybe she was just becoming. That afternoon, she taught Minjun to make proper mine frite, stir-fried noodles with vegetables and shrimp, seasoned with ginger and soy and sesame oil. He was getting better at Mauritian cooking, his precise nature lending itself well to following recipes. "In return," he said as they cooked, "I'll teach you to make proper kimchi, not the quick version, the traditional kind that takes time and patience." So they spent the evening making kimchi together, Minjun explaining the process with the reverence of someone passing down sacred knowledge. "It's about patience," he said as they salted the cabbage, watching it wilt slowly. "Every step matters. Rush it, and the fermentation is off. The flavour suffers. It's like," he paused, "it's like what we're doing, building something that needs time to develop properly. You can't force it. You can only create the right conditions and wait." "Philosophy from a crime boss," she teased. "Philosophy from my grandmother," he corrected softly. "She taught me when I was 8, before my father decided cooking was beneath the heir to his empire. I'd sneak to her house every weekend and help prepare kimchi for the winter. She never told my father." "You loved her." "She was the only person who made me feel human, who never expected me to be cold or calculating or perfect. With her, I could just be," he struggled for words, "a child. Someone who made mistakes and got messy and laughed." His hands stilled in the cabbage. "She died when I was 12. Heart attack. Sudden. I cried at her funeral. The last time I cried before you." "Before me?" Amelie asked softly. "That night you broke down, after you'd fallen asleep. I went to my office and his voice roughened. "I grieved for what I'd done to you, for what I'd become, for the man my grandmother raised me to be versus the monster my father made me." Amelie set down the cabbage, moving to wrap her arms around him from behind. "Your grandmother would be proud of you now. Not despite choosing me, because of it, because you're finally choosing to be human instead of the weapon your father forged." "I hope you're right." "I am, and someday, when all this settles, I'll take you to Mauritius. You can meet my grandmother. She'll terrify you with questions and judge you mercilessly, but if she decides you're worthy, she'll feed you until you can't move and adopt you into the family like you were born to it." "You want me to meet your grandmother?" He turned in her arms, his expression surprised. "Of course. If we're doing this, really doing this, eventually you'll meet my family properly, not as the gangster who threatened them, but as the man I love." She smiled slightly. "Fair warning, my grandmother is formidable. She'll ask about your intentions and your finances, and whether you go to church. Are you prepared for that? I look forward to it, he said, and sounded like he meant it. They finished making the kimchi together, the cabbage and spices mixing in large jars that would ferment slowly over weeks. While they worked, Lucas appeared in the doorway, his expression thoughtful. You two are disgustingly domestic, he said in Creole, like an old married couple. We've known each other a month, Amelie protested. Doesn't matter, you move around each other like you've been doing this for years. Lucas paused. It's actually kind of nice. Weird, but nice. That night, Minjun took Amelie to his meditation room, a small space at the back of the hanok with a shrine, incense, and sliding doors that opened to a private garden. My mentor is buried in the mountains near here, he explained, lighting incense with practiced movements. I come here every year on the anniversary of his death to perform Jesa, the ancestral rite. He hesitated. It's the most honest I ever am. When I'm honoring the dead, I can't lie about who I am or what I've become. He performed the ceremony with solemn reverence, bowing deeply, offering rice wine and fruit, speaking prayers in Korean she didn't understand but recognized as profound. She watched from the doorway, not wanting to intrude, witnessing his grief and his gratitude and his guilt, all mixing together in this private ritual. When he finally rose, he found her watching with tears on her face. Why are you crying? He asked softly. Because you're more than they let you be, she said. Your father, your organization, even yourself. You've all decided you're just a weapon, just a monster, but this, she gestured at the shrine, this is real too, the grief, the honor, the reverence for tradition and memory. You're not just one thing, Minjun, you're everything, all of it at once. He pulled her into the room, and what happened next felt sacred. They made love on the floor, surrounded by the lingering scent of incense and the weight of honored dead. Minjun moving inside her with a reverence that made her breath catch. Every touch felt like worship, every whispered endearment, Korean and Creole mixing in the darkness, felt like prayer. Jagiya. He breathed against her throat as he moved deeper. Saranghe, Saranghe. Monty Flair, she answered, her voice breaking on the Creole as pleasure built. Mo content toi, mo content toi. When they finally came together, his name a prayer on her lips, and hers a benediction on his. She understood that this was its own kind of worship, this connection between them, built from impossible beginnings and sustained despite every obstacle. It was holy in its defiance of everything that should have kept them apart. After, wrapped in his arms on the meditation room floor, she whispered against his chest, Your mentor would be proud of you, not despite me, because you're finally choosing to be human instead of just surviving. I hope you're right, he murmured into her hair. I am. They fell asleep there, and when Amelie dreamed that night, it was of futures she'd never let herself imagine. Minjun beside her on a Mauritian beach, her grandmother's blessing, their families gathered despite all odds, peace earned through impossible choices. She should have known peace was too fragile to last. The days at the hanok blurred together in a way that felt both too fast and achingly slow. Amelie found herself settling into routines she'd never expected, waking to find Minjun already working in his office. The smell of coffee drifting through the traditional house, cooking elaborate meals with Lucas, teaching her brother Mauritian recipes he'd been too young to learn before she left. Evening walks through the garden with Minjun, his hand warm in hers, talking about everything and nothing. It felt like playing house, like pretending they were a normal family instead of a crime boss, his mistress, and her kidnapped brother hiding from gang violence in a mountain retreat. But the pretending felt good, necessary even. I could get used to this, Lucas said one evening. They were sitting on the veranda, watching the sun set over the mountains, the air cool and clean in a way Seoul's never was. Not the whole being kidnapped by gangsters part, but this, the peace, the space to breathe. I didn't realize how much I was always just surviving until I got here. I know what you mean, Amelie said softly. Do you think we can keep it, this peace? I don't know. Minjun is trying to transition the organization toward legitimate business, but that takes time. And there are people who don't want him to change, who benefit from the violence. People like his father, Lucas said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, like his father. They sat in comfortable silence, and Amelie felt gratitude bloom in her chest, that her brother was safe, that he was here with her, that despite everything they'd somehow ended up in this strange sanctuary. But sanctuaries, she was learning, were temporary by nature. The call came on their 7th day at the Hanok. Minjun's phone rang during breakfast, and Amelie watched his expression shudder as he answered in Korean. The conversation was brief, but when he hung up, his jaw was tight. What's wrong? She asked. My father knows. About you, about this. He gestured between them. He's demanding I attend the family Seolal gathering next month, Lunar New Year. He specifically mentioned I should bring the foreign woman, so the family can meet you. Amelie's stomach dropped. That doesn't sound like an invitation. That sounds like a summons to judgment. It is. Minjun set down his coffee with careful precision. My father doesn't approve of distractions. He'll see you as exactly that, a liability that needs to be removed. He'll try to force me to end this arrangement, probably publicly in front of the entire family and key organization members. Then don't go, Lucas said from across the table. Tell him to fuck off. It's not that simple, Minjun said. Refusing a direct summons from my father in front of the organization is open disrespect. It gives him cause to question my fitness to lead, to potentially challenge my position. So you go alone, Amelie said. Handle your family obligations, come back. I'll stay here with Lucas where it's safe. No, Minjun's hand found hers, gripping tight. I'm not facing them alone, and I'm not hiding you like you're something to be ashamed of. If my father wants to meet you, he'll meet you, he'll see exactly what you mean to me, and he'll understand that I'm not ending this, no matter what he says. Minjun, that's final, he interrupted. You're mine. I don't care what my father thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. You're mine, and I'm not pretending otherwise. The possessive declaration should have annoyed her. Instead, it made dangerous warmth bloom in her chest. The kind of warmth that came from being chosen, from being claimed, from mattering enough that someone would defy their entire world for you. Okay, she said quietly, I'll go, but Lucas stays here, where it's safe. Agreed. What none of them knew was that Marie Rousseau had already booked a flight to Seoul. Amelie's mother had been suspicious since that staged video call weeks ago. The apartment that looked too perfect, her daughter's forced smile, Lucas's nervous energy, a mother knew. And Marie knew fear when she saw it. She'd lived with fear since the day her husband was killed, had let it shape every decision for 21 years. But fear of losing her daughter was stronger than fear of confronting danger. So she'd sold her jewellery, borrowed money from her mother Celeste, and bought a ticket to Seoul with the kind of desperate determination that came from refusing to lose another family member to violence. She would find her daughter, she would learn the truth, and she would bring Amelie home no matter what it cost. The collision of these two forces, Minjun's father summoning them to judgment, and Marie travelling to Korea to rescue her daughter, would happen in 3 weeks, at Lunar New Year, when both families would demand Amelie choose between the life she'd built and the family she'd left behind, when everything they'd carefully constructed would shatter. But for now, in the peaceful sanctuary of the mountain Hanok, Amelie had 3 more weeks of pretending, 3 weeks of stolen domesticity, 3 weeks of loving a man who was trying desperately to be worthy of her love. 3 weeks before the world came crashing back in. She intended to make every moment count. If you're feeling this story, if these impossible choices are hitting you where it hurts, subscribe now, because we're about to reach the breaking point. And trust us, you don't want to miss what happens when everything falls apart. Hit that button and stay with us. The real chaos is just beginning. The 3 weeks before Lunar New Year passed too quickly. Amelie spent them trying to prepare for a confrontation she couldn't fully imagine. How did you meet your lover's crime lord father? What did you wear to your own judgment? How did you stand in front of a room full of people who saw you as an outsider, a distraction, a liability, and convince them you deserved to be there? Minjun tried to prepare her, giving her details about Korean customs, about how to bow properly, about the hierarchy she'd be walking into. But there was only so much preparation could do when you were about to face a man who'd built an empire on brutality and saw emotion as weakness. "My father will test you," Minjun said one evening as they lay in bed. "He'll say things designed to make you react, to make me doubt. Don't take it personally, it's strategy." How do I not take it personally when he's judging whether I'm worthy of his son? By remembering that his approval doesn't matter. Only yours does. He pulled her closer. I don't need his blessing. I never have. But I need you to understand what you're walking into so you can make an informed choice about whether you want to face it. I already made my choice. I'm going. You can still change your mind. So can you. Not a chance in hell. They flew back to Seoul 3 days before Lunar New Year. The city felt different after weeks in the mountains. Too loud, too crowded, too sharp after the soft edges of the Hanok. Lucas stayed behind with security, his protests overruled by Minjun's flat refusal to bring him anywhere near the family estate. "Your sister is walking into a lion's den by choice," Minjun had told him. "I won't force you into the same danger." The Kang family estate sat in the hills outside Seoul, sprawling traditional compound that spoke of old money and older power. When their car pulled up to the gates, Amelie felt her stomach twist. "Last chance," Minjun said quietly, his hand finding hers. "Stop asking me that. I'm not running." "Good, because I don't want to do this without you." They entered together, and Amelie immediately understood why Minjun had tried to prepare her. The estate was filled with people, family members in traditional hanbok, organization lieutenants in expensive suits, everyone staring at them with varying degrees of curiosity and disapproval. She was the only non-Korean in the room, the only black person, the only woman who wasn't someone's wife or daughter by blood or marriage. She'd never felt more foreign in her life. Minjun's mother, Kang Hye-jin, greeted them at the entrance. Elegant in traditional dress, her expression carefully neutral. She bowed to her son, then looked at Amelie with dark eyes that missed nothing. "Welcome to our home," she said in careful English. "Please, come in." The interior was traditional Korean luxury, ondol floors, sliding doors, expensive art on walls that had witnessed generations of power. Other guests had already arrived, all dressed formally, all watching Amelie like she was an exotic animal that had wandered into their carefully cultivated world. Minjun stayed close, his hand on the small of her back, a silent claim that made several older men frown. Taehyun appeared beside them, bowing respectfully. "Hyungnim," he said, then switched to English for Amelie's benefit. "This is brave of you, both of you. Or stupid," Minjun said dryly. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Then Minjun's father appeared, and the room fell silent. Kang Song-ho was tall for his generation, grey-haired, with eyes like chips of obsidian. He radiated authority the way other men radiated heat, and when he looked at Amelie, she felt pinned like a butterfly in a collector's case. "So," he said in perfect English, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "this is the translator who's been living in my son's penthouse for the past 2 months." "Father," Minjun said, his tone carrying warning. "What? Should I pretend I don't know? That my sources haven't told me everything about Amélie Rousseau, her family, her debts, the convenient way those debts were paid shortly after she witnessed one of your operations?" Sung-ho's smile was cold. "I'm old, not blind." The room was silent, everyone watching the confrontation with avid interest. "Amelie is under my protection," Minjun said carefully, his voice measured but firm. "That's all the family needs to know." "Protection?" Sung-ho's laugh was harsh. "Is that what we're calling mistresses now? How progressive of you." Amelie felt her face heat with humiliation, but Minjun's hand tightened on her back, a silent request to let him handle this, to trust him. "She's not a mistress," Minjun said, his voice dropping into a register Amelie had learned meant danger. She's important to me, and you will show her respect." "Respect?" Sung-ho's expression hardened. "You want me to respect the foreign woman who's made you weak? Who's distracted you from your duties? Who's caused complications with the Jang faction that got 3 of our people killed? The Jang faction was handled by you abandoning your position, by you prioritizing this woman over the organization." Sung-ho moved closer, his voice rising. "You think I don't know what you're planning? Transitioning to legitimate business? Dismantling operations that took me 30 years to build? For what? For her?" Before Minjun could respond, there was a commotion at the entrance. Raised voices in Korean and broken English, someone arguing with security. "Let me through! My daughter is in there, I know she is!" Amelie's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. The doors slid open, and Marie Rousseau stood there, 52 years old and fierce with maternal rage, having somehow bullied her way past Minjun's security through sheer force of desperate will. "Maman?" Amelie breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Bondi, what are you doing here?" Marie's eyes found her daughter across the room, and the relief in her expression shifted immediately to horror as she took in the scene. The expensive estate, the obviously powerful people, Minjun's hand possessive on Amelie's back. "So it's true," Marie said, her voice breaking. She switched to rapid Creole, words spilling too fast for most people in the room to follow. "I hoped I was wrong. I prayed I was wrong, but you're really with him. The gangster. Just like your father, killed by gang violence, and you're sleeping with one of them." "Maman, please let me explain." "Explain what?" Marie moved into the room, and Amelie saw her mother truly for the first time in months, thinner, older, worn down by years of grief and worry. "Explain how my daughter sold herself, how you lied to me for months, how Lucas is hiding somewhere because rival gangs threatened him." "You know about Lucas?" Amelie felt the room closing in. "I know everything. I hired an investigator. Cost me everything I had, but I know you witnessed a crime. I know this man." She gestured at Minjun with something close to disgust. "This criminal threatened you, forced you into his bed, and you—" Her voice cracked completely. "Ayo, daughter, how could you? After what happened to your father, after everything I've done to keep us safe, how could you willingly enter this world?" The silence in the room was absolute. Minjun's father watched the confrontation with dark satisfaction, clearly enjoying seeing his son's carefully constructed facade crack. "Well," Sung-ho said, his voice carrying quiet triumph, "this is illuminating. Tell me, Minjun, Does your important woman come with additional family drama? Because from where I stand, she's looking more like a liability every second. Minjun's expression had gone dangerously cold. My relationship with Amelie is none of your concern. It's entirely my concern when it threatens this family's stability, when it distracts you from your duties, when you're planning to dismantle my life's work for a woman who brings nothing but complications. Enough! Minjun's voice cut across his father's like a blade. You want to discuss liability. Let's discuss your gambling debts that I've been covering for 3 years. Your mistress in Busan that you think the family doesn't know about. How dare you? Sung-ho hissed, taking a step forward. The room erupted, family members choosing sides, voices rising in Korean and English, old grievances surfacing, and in the middle of it all, Marie crossed the room to her daughter, gripping Amelie's arms with desperate strength. Come home, she said in Creole, her voice breaking. Right now. Leave this place. Leave him. Come back to Mauritius where you're safe. I can't, Amelie whispered. You can. You will. I won't. Marie's voice broke completely. I won't bury another family member because of gang violence. Your father died in a shootout. Random chance. Wrong place. Wrong time. But you chose this. You walked into danger willingly, and I can't. Pa Rod Tracasse, daughter, please. I can't lose you too. Not like this. Not to them. And there it was. The heart of her mother's fear. The trauma that had shaped Amelie's entire childhood. Marie hadn't just lost a husband 21 years ago. She'd lost her sense of safety, her ability to trust that the people she loved would survive the day. She'd built her entire life around avoiding violence, around keeping her children away from the gangs that prowled Port Louis, around sacrificing everything for the illusion of security, and now her daughter had chosen the very thing she'd spent decades fleeing. Maman, Amelie said gently, aware of the room watching, aware of Minjun's father's satisfied smirk. I understand your fear. I do. Papa's death shaped all of us. But I'm not Papa. I'm not going to die because I love someone involved in this world. You can't promise that. No one can promise that. No, but I can promise that living in fear, the way you've lived since Papa died, that's not living, that's just surviving. And I'm done just surviving. She pulled away from her mother's grip, standing straighter. I chose this, not because I was forced, not because I had no options. I chose Minjun because he makes me feel alive in a way I never have before, because he sees me, really sees me, not as the dutiful daughter or the provider or the translator, just as me, and that's worth fighting for. Even if it kills you, even then. Marie stared at her daughter like she didn't recognize her. Who are you? What happened to my careful, obedient girl? She grew up, Amelie said quietly. She learned that being careful doesn't protect you, that following rules doesn't save you, that sometimes you have to choose the dangerous thing because it's the real thing. Minjun's voice cut in, speaking directly to Marie in careful French. Amelie hadn't known he spoke French. Madame Rousseau, I understand your fear. Your husband died to gang violence. You've spent 20 years building safety for your children, and now your daughter is with someone like me, someone who represents everything you've tried to protect them from. Marie turned to him, and Amelie saw her mother truly look at Minjun for the first time, taking in his expensive suit, his cold authority, the way the room's entire power dynamic shifted around him. You're the boss, Marie said flatly. Not just a member. You run this organization. Yes. And you think you can protect my daughter? Keep her safe in your violent world? I know I can. I've restructured my entire organization to ensure it. I'm transitioning out of the most dangerous operations, building legitimate businesses, creating exit strategies for my people. Minjun's gaze didn't waver. Because your daughter makes me want to be better than what I am, better than what my father made me, and I'm willing to dismantle everything I've built just to give her a future that doesn't end in blood. Pretty words from a criminal, Marie said bitterly. True words from a man in love, Minjun corrected. The admission hung in the air. Minjun's mother gasped softly. This was the first she'd heard it spoken aloud. His father's expression turned thunderous. You're in love? Sung-ho's voice was dangerously quiet. With a foreign woman who brings nothing but complications? You're willing to destroy family alliances, ignore dynasty obligations, undermine everything I've built for love? Yes, Minjun said simply, turning to face his father fully. I'm in love with her, and I'm choosing her over everything else. Then you're weak, Sung-ho spat. And weak men don't lead this organization. Then I don't lead. Minjun's voice was steady, certain. I've been planning my exit for weeks. Taehyun is ready to take over. The transition can happen smoothly, or it can happen with blood. Your choice. But I'm done living the life you designed for me. I'm done being the weapon you forged. I choose her. I choose a future that's mine. To build, not yours to dictate. The room exploded. Sung-ho lunged forward, only stopped by Taehyun physically stepping between father and son. Family members shouted in Korean, some supporting Minjun, others condemning him as a traitor. Security moved forward, uncertain who to protect from whom, and in the chaos, Minjun's mother quietly moved to Amelie's side, gently taking Marie's arm. Come with me, Hyejin said in English, her voice barely audible over the shouting. Both of you, quickly! She led Amelie and Marie through a side door into a private sitting room, traditional space with low table and cushions, away from the chaos of the main hall. The moment the door slid shut, the noise muted to angry rumbles. Your son is making a terrible mistake, Marie said immediately, her English heavily accented but clear. Perhaps, Hyejin agreed, surprising both women. Or perhaps he's finally making a choice for himself instead of living the life his father demanded. She looked at Amelie with something like sympathy. I made the same choice your mother is asking you to make. When I was young, I loved someone, a kind man, a safe man. But my father arranged marriage to Sung-ho, powerful, wealthy, connected. I chose duty, I chose the safe path. I chose to please my family. And you regret it, Amelie said softly. Every day. Hyejin's smile was sad. Years of disappointment etched in the lines around her mouth. I've lived 40 years in a loveless marriage, watching my husband build an empire I despise, raising a son I've barely known because his father trained the humanity out of him, and now, she gestured toward the door where Minjun's voice could be heard arguing with his father. Now my son is finally showing the courage I never had, to choose love over duty, to risk everything for something real. He'll lose everything, Marie protested. His family, his position, possibly his life if his father decides he's too much of a liability. He'll lose the things that were killing him slowly, Hyejin corrected gently, and he'll gain a life that's his to live, not his father's weapon, not his family's tool. His own person making his own choices. She turned to Amelie. That's not weakness, that's the strongest choice he's ever made. And if you love him, you'll honor that choice by standing beside him when he makes it. Marie looked at her daughter, and Amelie saw decades of fear and grief and fierce maternal love warring in her mother's expression. If you stay with him, Marie said finally, her voice small, I can't protect you. I can't save you if this goes wrong. I can't. Her voice broke. I can't watch you die like your father did. I won't survive it, Amelie. Losing you would kill me. Then don't watch, Amelie said, tears streaming down her face. Go back to Mauritius. Live your life. Be safe. I'm not asking you to accept this. I'm not asking you to approve. I'm telling you I've made my choice, and I hope, someday, when you're ready, you can forgive me for it. That's not fair, Marie whispered, asking me to just let you go into danger and do nothing. I'm not asking you to let me go. I'm telling you that I've already gone. I've been gone since the moment I chose to stay with him. Amelie crossed the room, pulling her mother into a fierce embrace. I love you, Maman. I love you so much, but I can't live your life. I can't spend the next 40 years afraid of everything because something terrible happened once. I have to take the risk, even if it destroys me, because the alternative, living small and scared and safe, that would destroy me faster. Marie held her daughter, her small frame shaking with suppressed sobs. For a long moment, they just stood there, mother and daughter, both crying, both terrified, both knowing that something fundamental had just shifted between them. I forgive you, Marie finally said in Creole, against Amelie's hair, her voice breaking on every word. Monty Flair! I forgive you, even though I don't understand, even though I'm terrified, even though every instinct I have is screaming at me to drag you away from here. I forgive you because you're my daughter and I love you and... Her voice cracked completely. And I can't lose you twice. If staying with him means I keep you in my life, even like this, even in this world I hate, then I'll learn to accept it, even if it kills me. Amelie held her mother tighter, feeling the weight of her choice settle fully on her shoulders. She was choosing Minjun, choosing danger and uncertainty and a future that had no guarantees, choosing to break her mother's heart in the name of her own happiness. But she was also choosing herself, choosing to live instead of just survive, choosing love over fear. In the next room, she could hear Minjun still arguing with his father, his voice raised now, all pretense of respect gone. I don't need your approval. I don't need your blessing. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent every one of those years becoming what you wanted instead of what I wanted. But I'm done. You can disown me, disinherit me, erase my name from the family. I don't care. Because I finally found something worth more than your empire. Something that makes me feel human instead of... A crash. Something breaking. Shouting in Korean too rapid for Amelie to follow. Then Sung-ho's voice, cold and final. You have 72 hours to remove yourself from all organizational properties. After that, you're on your own. And if I see you again, I won't remember you're my son. You're dead to me, Minjun. You and your whore, both. Silence. Then Minjun's voice, steady and clear. Then I'm dead to you. But I'm alive for her, and that's enough. The door to the sitting room slid open. Minjun stood there, his expression carved from stone, his hands clenched at his sides. Behind him, the main hall was in chaos. Family members arguing, security trying to maintain order, Taehyun's scarred face tight with worry. We're leaving, Minjun said. Now. Amelie extracted herself from her mother's embrace, wiping her tears. Maman, go, Marie said, her voice hoarse. Go with him. I'll stay in Seoul for a few days, at a hotel. If you change your mind, if you need me, call. I'll come get you. No questions, no judgment. Just, she touched Amelie's face with trembling fingers. Just come back to me alive, Monty Flair. That's all I ask. Come back alive. I will. I promise. They left the estate together. Minjun, Amelie, and Taehyun moving through the chaos toward the cars. Family members stared, some with satisfaction, others with concern. Minjun's mother appeared as they reached the door, pressing something into her son's hand, a family ring, Amelie saw, gold and jade. I'm proud of you, Hyejin whispered in Korean, then in English for Amelie. Take care of each other. Minjun nodded once, unable to speak. And then they were gone, out into the cold night air, into the waiting car, leaving behind the family that had just disowned him and the future that had just been torn away. In the car, Amelie reached for Minjun's hand. It was shaking, barely perceptible, but shaking nonetheless. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just lost everything. My family, my position, my everything." "Not everything. You have me. Is that enough?" "It has to be, because I just chose you over my mother's peace of mind, over her mental health and her trauma and 21 years of her trying to protect us. I chose you despite knowing what it cost her, so you better be worth it." He pulled her against him, his arms tight enough to hurt. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worth it." "Good, because I'm holding you to that." They drove through Seoul in silence, but it wasn't the peaceful silence of the Hanok. It was the loaded silence of people who'd just burned their worlds down and were waiting to see what would rise from the ashes. When they reached the penthouse, Minjun's private property, not owned by the organization, they found Lucas waiting, his expression worried. "I saw the news," he said. "Korean news sites are reporting that Kang Minjun has left the organization, that there's been a, succession. They're saying Taehyun is taking over." "It's true," Minjun said flatly. "I've been disowned. We have 72 hours to vacate all organization properties. This penthouse is mine personally, so we're safe here for now. But we need to make plans, figure out our next move." "Next move?" Amelie asked. "What are our options?" "We could leave Korea entirely. I have properties in other countries, money in offshore accounts. We could start over somewhere new, or..." He paused. "Or we could stay. I still have legitimate business interests here. Real estate, tech investments, import-export. It won't be the same as running the organization, but it's enough to live comfortably." "What do you want?" Amelie asked. "I want you safe. Everything else is negotiable." They spent the next 2 weeks in strange limbo. Minjun coordinating with Taehyun to ensure smooth transition, moving their belongings out of organization properties, severing ties with the criminal empire he'd spent 15 years building. Amelie helped where she could, but mostly she just watched him mourn, because that's what it was, she realized. Mourning for the life he'd known, the identity he'd carried, the power he'd wielded. "Do you regret it?" she asked one night as they lay in bed. "Every moment," he admitted, "and not at all. I regret losing my mother's presence in my life. I regret the pain this caused. I regret..." He stopped. "I regret a lot of things, but I don't regret choosing you. Never that. Even if it means starting over with nothing." "We don't have nothing. We have each other. We have your brother. We have my mother's secret support and your mother's reluctant acceptance. We have legitimate business ventures and enough money to be comfortable. That's more than most people get." That's a very optimistic way of looking at being disowned by a crime lord. "I'm trying this new thing called hope. It's uncomfortable, but you keep insisting it's worthwhile." She kissed him, soft and sweet, and felt him relax against her, the tension bleeding out of his shoulders, the grief loosening its grip just enough to let him breathe. They'd survived the confrontation, they'd made their choice, they'd burned their bridges and walked away from their old lives. Now they just had to figure out how to build new ones. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The bomb went off on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after the Lunar New Year disaster. Amelie was in the kitchen making coffee when Minjun's phone started ringing, multiple calls simultaneously, his emergency alert going off, Taehyun's name flashing across the screen. Minjun answered and Amelie watched his face go white. "What?" His voice was barely a whisper. "When? How many casualties?" He listened for a moment, then ended the call with shaking hands. "What happened?" Amelie asked, though she already knew it was bad, very bad. The Seoul headquarters, the one I just handed over to Taehyun, the Jang faction, remnants we thought were neutralized, they bombed it. His voice was hollow. Multiple casualties. Taehyun is in critical condition. His wife, he stopped, unable to finish the sentence. She was visiting him, bringing lunch. His voice broke. She didn't make it. Bondi, Amelie breathed. The next calls confirmed the worst. 3 of Minjun's most loyal soldiers dead. 5 more injured. The headquarters building partially collapsed, and a message left at the scene, spray painted on the wall for everyone to see. Your weakness made you vulnerable. The girl was just the beginning. Minjun stood frozen in the middle of their living room, staring at his phone, and Amelie watched something break in him. The careful control he'd maintained, the belief that leaving the organization would end the violence, the hope that choosing love over duty wouldn't cost other people their lives. They targeted them because of me, he said hollowly. Because I left, because I chose you over my responsibility to protect them. Taehyun's wife is dead because I abandoned my position. Those soldiers are dead because the Jang faction saw an opening when I walked away. All of this, his voice roughened, all of this because I was selfish enough to choose love over duty. That's not true. It's exactly true. He turned to her, and she saw devastation in his eyes. Don't you understand? Loving me gets people killed. Being with me makes you a target and makes everyone around me vulnerable. Your mother was right. I'm poison. Everything I touch turns to blood and death and... Stop, Amelie said firmly, crossing to him. This wasn't your fault. The Jang faction made a choice to attack. They're responsible for those deaths, not you. I created the vulnerability by leaving. His hands fisted in his hair. I should have stayed, should have protected them. You should have what? Spent the rest of your life being your father's weapon. Never allowed yourself to want anything, to love anyone. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. That's not living, Minjun. That's just existing, and you can't save everyone. You can't protect the whole world by sacrificing yourself. But I can save you, he said, his voice breaking. I can save you by letting you go, by sending you away from this, away from me, before you end up like Taehyun's wife, another casualty of my selfishness. Don't you dare, she said fiercely. Don't you dare push me away because you're scared. I'm not scared, I'm terrified. Terrified that one day I'll get a call that you've been hurt, that you've been taken, that you've been killed because someone wanted to get to me. I can't. His voice cracked completely. I can't watch you die, Amelie. I'd rather lose you now, to distance than later to violence. That's not your choice to make. It's the only choice I can make. He pulled away from her, his expression shuddering into the cold mask she hadn't seen in weeks. You should go. Take your family. I'll arrange protection, ensure you're safe. But I need to handle this. The Jang faction. The retaliation. He stopped. I need to fix what I broke. And I can't do that with you here as a distraction. So that's it? You're sending me away? I'm setting you free, he said. But his voice was hollow. Go back to Mauritius. Live your life. Find someone who doesn't come with body counts and blood on his hands. Find someone worthy of you. You're worthy of me. No, he said quietly, I'm really not. And every day you stay with me, I endanger you more. So please, for once, just for once, let me do the right thing. And walk away. Walking away isn't the right thing. It's the only thing, he interrupted. I'm going to Seoul. I'm going to end the Jang faction. And then I'm going to disappear for a while, figure out how to live with myself after all of this. He moved toward the bedroom, and she realized he was packing, actually leaving her. Minjun, please. I love you, he said, not turning around. I love you more than I've ever loved anything, and that's exactly why I have to let you go, because loving me will get you killed, and I can't. I won't let that happen. He left within the hour. Amelie stood in the empty penthouse, listening to the elevator carry him away, feeling her world tilt on its axis. He'd left her. After everything they'd fought for, everything they'd sacrificed, all the bridges they'd burned, he'd left her anyway, because he loved her too much to risk her, because he was afraid, because he was wrong. She sank onto the couch, Lucas appearing from his room with worried eyes. "Sister, what happened? Where's Minjun going?" "To do something stupid," Amelie said, tears streaming down her face. "To push me away because he thinks it'll keep me safe, to be noble and self-sacrificing and completely idiotic." "Are you going to let him?" She thought about it, thought about respecting his choice, going back to Mauritius, living the safe life her mother wanted for her, thought about ending this before it destroyed them both. Then she thought about Minjun alone, spiraling into guilt and violence, becoming the monster he'd been trying so hard not to be. "No," she said finally, "I'm not letting him self-destruct because he's scared. He saved me when I was too afraid to save myself. Now I'm going to do the same for him. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." She pulled out her phone. "I'm going to need your help." Minjun spent 3 days in Seoul, systematically dismantling what remained of the Jang faction. He was efficient, ruthless, utterly terrifying. Every skill his father had taught him, every brutal lesson learned in 15 years of violence, he used them all. He didn't sleep, barely ate, just moved through Seoul's underworld like death incarnate, leaving a trail of blood that would be remembered for years. By the time he stood in the Jang boss's office, the man cowering behind his desk, begging for mercy, Minjun had crossed every line he'd promised himself he wouldn't cross again. "Please," the Jang boss begged. "I was just following orders, trying to maintain territory." "You killed innocent people," Minjun said quietly, his gun steady. "Taehyun's wife never hurt anyone. Those soldiers were just doing their jobs. You killed them to send me a message. Now I'm sending one back." He pulled the trigger. The recoil barely registered. The Jang boss slumped in his chair, dead before he hit the desk. Minjun stood there, looking at what he'd done, the violence he'd promised Amelie he'd leave behind, the monster he'd sworn he'd stop being, and he realized he'd become exactly what his father had made him. Again, he'd destroyed the Jang faction, avenged his people, sent a clear message that threats would be answered with overwhelming force. But he'd also lost himself completely, lost the man Amelie had been helping him become, lost the hope that he could be more than a weapon, lost everything that mattered in the pursuit of vengeance that would never bring back the dead. He left the office, walking through the carnage he'd created, his phone buzzing with missed calls. Amelie, over and over, her voicemails increasingly desperate. "Minjun, please call me back. I know you're hurting, I know you're scared, but don't do this alone. I don't care what you've done. I don't care how much blood is on your hands. I love you. Come back to me. Please, please come back. Back. Home." He didn't have a home anymore. Just the penthouse that was temporary, the empire he'd abandoned, the family that had disowned him, except Amelie had called it home, had called him home. Minjun's hands were shaking as he dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "Seoul. Cleaning up the mess?" "Is it done? The Jang faction?" "Yes." His voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. "They won't threaten anyone again. Then come back. Come home to me." "I can't. Amelie, He stopped, leaning against his car in the parking garage, surrounded by the aftermath of his violence. "I'm everything you should run from, everything your mother feared. I just killed 6 people in 3 days, systematically, coldly, without hesitation. I'm a monster, and being with me will only destroy you. You're not a monster, she said firmly. You're a man who did terrible things to protect the people he loves. There's a difference, is there? Because I can't see it anymore. I can't, his voice cracked. I can't see anything except blood, except the look on Taehyun's face when I visited him in the hospital, except his wife's empty chair at their apartment, except the soldiers who died because I was selfish enough to choose love over duty. Then come back and let me show you, she said. Minjun, I know who you are. I've always known, and I'm choosing you anyway. Not despite the darkness, accepting all of you, the good and the bad, and everything in between. That's what love is. Not pretending you're perfect, choosing you even when you're broken. What if I can't be fixed? Then we'll be broken together. But we'll be together. Minjun closed his eyes, feeling tears leak from the corners for the first time since his grandmother's funeral 20 years ago. I'm so tired, he whispered. I'm so tired of being this, of violence and blood, and watching everyone I care about suffer because of me. I know, so stop. Walk away. Come back to the penthouse. We'll figure out the rest together. Just like that. Just like that. Her voice was steady, certain, the lifeline he needed. I'm waiting for you, Minjun. I'll always wait for you. So come home. Okay, he said finally, his voice breaking. I'm coming home. I'll be here. He drove back to the penthouse as dawn broke over Seoul, covered in other people's blood and carrying the weight of a lifetime's violence. Amelie met him at the door. She didn't flinch from the blood, didn't lecture him about the killing. She just pulled him inside, led him to the bathroom, and carefully, tenderly, helped him wash the blood from his hands. My grandmother used to say, she murmured as she cleaned his hands, her touch infinitely gentle, Ki pa mo, pa ankor fini. What's not dead isn't finished. You're not dead, Minjun, which means you're not finished. You can still become something new. I don't know how. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out. She dried his hands with a soft towel, then led him to the bedroom. Rest first. Everything else can wait. He fell asleep in her arms, and when he woke hours later, he found Lucas sitting beside the bed. Your girl asked me to tell you something, her brother said in careful Korean. He'd been learning fast. She says Taehyun's wife wouldn't want you to become a monster to avenge her. She'd want you to honor her by being the man Taehyun told her about, the one who could still feel, still love, still choose humanity over violence. Minjun sat up slowly. When did Amelie talk to Taehyun? She's been visiting the hospital, getting to know the people you were protecting, understanding the whole picture. Lucas's expression was serious, older than his 19 years. She loves you, really loves you, the kind of love that walks into danger to pull you back from the edge. So don't waste it by deciding you're too broken to deserve it. Trust me, she's seen your worst. If she's still choosing you, believe her when she says you're worth choosing. The wisdom from a teenager shouldn't have hit so hard, but it did. Minjun found Amelie in the garden terrace, talking quietly with her mother. Both women looked up when he appeared, and he saw Marie tense, still wary, still protective, but no longer purely hostile. I'm sorry, he said to Marie, the words coming easier than he'd expected, for everything I've put your family through, for dragging Amelie into my world, for being exactly what you feared. Marie studied him for a long moment, then, surprisingly, she stood and crossed to him. My daughter tells me you saved Lucas when the Jang faction threatened him, she said in careful English, that you've dismantled most of your criminal operations to build a legitimate future, that you chose her over an empire. She paused, These are not the actions of a monster. These are the actions of a man trying very hard to be better than what he was raised to be. I just killed 6 people, he said bluntly, to avenge people I loved. That doesn't seem gore. My husband died because of senseless gang violence, Marie interrupted. Random chaos. No purpose, no protection, just wrong place, wrong time. But you kill with purpose. To protect, to defend. I don't like it. I probably never will. But I understand the difference between senseless violence and purposeful protection. She took a breath. Don't make me regret this. Don't prove me wrong about you, and don't ever make my daughter cry unless they're tears of joy. Do we have an understanding? Yes, Mum, Minjun said, something like hope blooming in his chest. We have an understanding. Good, Marie nodded once, then returned to her seat, leaving him alone with Amelie. Your mother just gave me permission to be with you, he said, somewhat dazed. She did. After a very long conversation where I may have mentioned you were planning to marry me eventually. I was planning to… What? Amelie smiled. Well, you should be. After everything we've been through, unless you're planning to let me go. Never, he said fiercely. Then you should probably make it official someday. When we're ready. When the chaos settles. She moved into his arms, and he held her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. But first, you need to visit Taehyun, apologize to him properly, tell him what his friendship has meant, honor his wife's memory by being the man she believed you could be. And then we start over. Build something new. Together. Minjun pressed his forehead to hers, breathing in her scent. Something floral mixed with the spices she used for cooking, uniquely Amelie. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. What if I fail? What if I can't be the man you deserve? Then you fail and we figure it out. That's how this works, Minjun. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try and keep trying, even when it's hard, even when you want to give up. Even when I'm terrified I'll destroy you. Especially then. He kissed her softly, reverently, pouring all his broken hope into the contact. And when she kissed him back, fierce and certain and full of faith he didn't feel in himself yet, he thought maybe, just maybe, he could learn to believe in the future she was offering, a future built not on violence and fear, but on impossible love and deliberate choice, a future that started with one simple decision, to stay, to try, to be better for her, for himself, for the life they could build from the ashes of who they'd been. 1 year later, the beach house in Mauritius sat painted in sunset colours. Coral pink and soft yellow, traditional island architecture mixed with comfortable modern updates. Palm trees swayed in the evening breeze, and the Indian Ocean glittered like scattered diamonds in the fading light. Amelie stood on the veranda, one hand resting on her rounded belly, 6 months pregnant and showing beautifully. Her grandmother's blessing beads circled her wrist, warm against her skin, and she wore her hair in natural curls that the salt air had made even wilder. Behind her, in the kitchen, she could hear Minjun struggling with Mauritian Creole pronunciation, while Lucas tried to teach him the proper way to season vin dae, pickled fish that required patience and precise spice ratios. No, Hyung, not like that. You're putting in too much mustard seed. The whole dish will be bitter. The recipe says 2 tablespoons. The recipe is a guideline. You have to feel it, like making kimchi. You don't follow rules exactly, you adapt to the ingredients. I'm never going to master this cuisine. Not with that attitude. Here, let me show you again. Amelie smiled, listening to her brother and her husband. They'd married quietly 4 months ago, in a ceremony that blended Korean and Mauritian traditions beautifully. It had been small, intimate, attended by Lucas, Marie, Minjun's mother Hyejin, who'd flown in secretly, Tae-hyun, recovered but retired from the organisation, and her grandmother Celeste, who'd interrogated Minjun mercilessly before giving her blessing. "So, you're the gangster who stole my granddaughter's heart," Celeste had said in Creole, her eyes sharp despite her 76 years. Minjun had bowed in the traditional Korean way, then answered in careful Creole he'd been learning for months. "Oui, grandmère, and I promise to spend my life being worthy of the gift." Celeste had studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "Good answer. Now come eat. You're too thin. What has my granddaughter been feeding you?" The wedding had been perfect, a beach ceremony at sunset, Min Jun in a hanbok that made him look like he'd stepped out of a historical drama, Amelie in a dress that incorporated both Korean and Mauritian design elements. They'd exchanged vows in 3 languages, Korean, Creole, and English, building a marriage that honoured all the parts of themselves. Marie had cried through the entire ceremony, not tears of grief, but something more complicated, joy and fear and reluctant acceptance all tangled together. She still didn't fully approve, probably never would, but she came to dinner once a week and she'd started learning basic Korean phrases so she could communicate with her future grandchild's father. "Your daughter is stubborn," Marie had told Minjun once. "She gets that from me. Once she makes a decision, nothing changes her mind. So I suppose I'm stuck with you. I'll try to be worth being stuck with, Madame Rousseau. You better, because if you hurt her, Grandmother Celeste and I will make your life very unpleasant. We may be small, but we're fierce. I don't doubt it for a moment." Now, a year after that catastrophic Lunar New Year, they'd built a life that neither of them could have imagined. Minjun had sold most of his Korean properties, keeping only a modest apartment in Seoul for occasional business trips. His legitimate businesses, tech investments, real estate, properly licensed, import-export, provided more than enough income. The violence was behind them, mostly. There were still moments when she'd wake to find him staring out the window at the ocean, his expression haunted by memories he couldn't quite shake. Still days when news from Seoul, another gang war, another killing, made him retreat into himself, the guilt eating at him. But there were more moments of peace, of him working at the small desk in their bedroom, conducting business via video calls in careful English and Korean, of him learning to fish with local Mauritian fishermen, coming home smelling like salt and sun and actually smiling, of him talking to their unborn daughter in mixed Korean and Creole, his hand warm on Amelie's belly, already a better father than his own had been. "Jagiya," Minjun called from the kitchen, pulling her from her thoughts. "Come tell your brother I'm not completely hopeless at this." "You are a little hopeless," Amelie called back, but she was smiling as she moved into the kitchen. She found Minjun covered in turmeric stains, Lucas laughing helplessly, and the kitchen in cheerful chaos. It looked nothing like the sterile penthouse in Seoul, nothing like the traditional hanok where they'd hidden from danger. It looked like home. Minjun saw her and his expression softened completely. The cold crime boss gone entirely, replaced by a man who'd learned to feel again, to hope again, to build instead of destroy. "How's our daughter?" he asked, his hand immediately going to her belly, feeling for kicks. "She's active, kicking constantly. I think she's going to be trouble." "Of course she is. She's half you." He kissed her softly, stubborn and fierce and absolutely worth every bit of chaos she'll bring. "Ayo, are you saying I'm chaotic?" "I'm saying you turned my entire life upside down in the best possible way." He kissed her again, deeper this time. Lucas made a gagging sound. "Get a room, you two. Some of us are trying to cook here without being subjected to this nonsense." "This is our house. We'll kiss where we want," Minjun said, without looking away from Amelie. Then, I'm going to Grandma Celeste's. At least she doesn't subject me to this level of domestic bliss. It's nauseating. He left with dramatic flair, and Amelie and Minjun were alone in the kitchen, surrounded by half-prepared food and the sounds of the ocean outside. "Do you miss it?" she asked quietly, the question she'd been afraid to ask for months. "Your old life, the power, the respect, the empire." "Sometimes," he admitted, his honesty as unflinching as always. "And then I come home to you and realize I didn't know what power actually felt like until I held something real. Something built on choice instead of fear." His hand moved to cup her face. "This, you, our daughter, this life we're building. This is more valuable than any empire, more powerful than any organization. Because it's ours. We chose it. We built it. We fought for it. My mother says you've gotten soft. Your mother's probably right," he smiled. "But soft is better than hard. Love is better than violence. Building is better than destroying. Look at you, getting philosophical. I learned from the best." He kissed her forehead. "Saranghae, Amelie, now and always." "Mo content toi," she answered in Creole. "Forever." They finished making dinner together, vin daye that Minjun actually managed not to ruin, tol puri from Celeste's recipe, fresh fruit from the market. When Marie and Celeste arrived with Lucas, they ate on the veranda as the sun set, blending Korean and Mauritian food on one table, mixing languages naturally, building family from impossible pieces. Later, after everyone had left and the dishes were cleaned, Amelie and Minjun walked on the beach. His arm was around her, her head on his shoulder, their daughter moving between them, a presence that felt like promise, like hope, like proof that beautiful things could grow from the darkest soil. "What do you think she'll be like?" Amelie asked. "Our daughter, when she grows up." "Strong," Minjun said immediately. "Like her mother, brave enough to choose love over fear. Smart enough to question everything, kind enough to see the humanity in broken people. She'll have your eyes and your stubbornness." "My stubbornness? You're the one who refused to leave when any rational person would have run." "I prefer determined." "Stubborn," he said, but he was smiling. They walked in comfortable silence, and Amelie thought about the impossible journey that had brought them here. From that first night, terror and vulnerability and unexpected tenderness, to this moment, walking on a Mauritian beach as husband and wife, parents-to-be, survivors of a love that should have destroyed them, but instead had saved them both. "Do you ever regret it?" Minjun asked suddenly. "Staying with me, choosing this life instead of the safe one your mother wanted for you?" "Never," she said without hesitation. "Not once, not even in the hardest moments, because you gave me something I didn't know I was missing. You made me feel alive, not just surviving, not just existing, actually living." "I almost destroyed you." "No, you almost destroyed yourself trying to protect me. There's a difference." She stopped walking, turning to face him fully in the fading light. "Minjun, listen to me. You're not your past. You're not the violence you've done or the empire you walked away from. You're the man who chose tenderness over cruelty that first night, who learned to make dol puri because I was homesick, who gave up everything he had to build something new with me. That's who you are now. That's who our daughter will know. That's who I love. What if it's not enough? What if I can't be the father she deserves? What if, then we'll figure it out," she interrupted, echoing words she'd told him 100 times before. "Together, like we've figured out everything else." "Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, Minjun. We made it. We survived. We built something beautiful from the wreckage. That's enough. You're enough." He pulled her close as her pregnant belly would allow, and she felt the exact moment he let himself believe her, felt the tension leave his shoulders, The walls come down completely, the man she loved fully present and unguarded and free. I love you, he whispered against her hair, the words still new enough to feel precious. I love you, and I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every single day. You didn't have to deserve me, she said. You just had to choose me, and you did. Every day, every moment you chose me. That's what made all the difference. Forever? He asked, the question carrying echoes of a year ago, of dawn breaking over Seoul, of a choice made in the aftermath of violence. Forever, she promised, the answer as certain now as it had been then. They kissed as the sun set over the Indian Ocean, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and when they finally pulled apart, Amelie saw tears on Minjun's face, not tears of grief, but of gratitude, of wonder, of a man who'd walked through hell and somehow found heaven on the other side. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on me, for believing I could be more than what I was, for loving me despite every reason not to. Thank you for being worth it, she answered. They walked back to the beach house, hand in hand, their daughter moving between them, the future stretching ahead like the ocean, vast and unknown and full of possibility. They'd chosen each other against all odds, against families and gangs and their own demons. They'd built something real from impossible beginnings, something that had tested them and nearly broken them, but ultimately made them stronger. And that choice, that daily decision to stay, to try, to love despite everything, that was what made this real. Not perfect, not safe, not easy, but real. And alive, and theirs. And that was more than enough. The end. Tell us in the comments, would you have stayed? Would you have fought for love against your family? Would you have chosen the person who makes you better, even if it costs you everything else? We want to know, because some loves are worth the sacrifice. Some choices are worth the consequences. And some stories, like Amelie and Minjun's, prove that even when everything says run, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay. Subscribe now. More stories are coming, and they're going to wreck you in the best way possible.